This might be pretty controversial to say, and I might get in trouble for saying it, but I think a Halo content drought is going to ruin Halo Infinite, and it certainly almost did. It became overwhelmingly obvious to me that 343 is making the same mistake that they did with Halo 4 and Halo 5, and why I'm pretty concerned about what is coming next. Guys, if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to smash that like button so hard it turns blue. And be sure to join me on the great Halo journey of following Halo for over 9 years. This is such a very important subject that I feel so closely with, although I've never openly discussed it, and it's about time. Firstly, what is a content drought? Do we even have one? And if so, why? Obviously, a content drought is exactly what it sounds like. Lack of news, images, gameplay, cutscenes, trailers, yada yada. After all, we have waited about 5 years for anything substantial, and we finally got some stuff, but we really still know nothing about the story and just breadcrumbs. I mean, seriously, breadcrumbs about multiplayer, let alone any gameplay or screenshots. So we had this huge surge of interest, millions of fans resurfacing, rewatching the trailers, content, and so on. So much hype. But then suddenly, 2 weeks later, back into the abyss of darkness. Absolutely no news. Now, we did get some concept art and some light details, which was, I think, good enough, and we'll talk about that later. But ultimately, we still know nothing about when we're going to see news next, and when the game might be released next year, or when we might see another trailer. And to make matters worse, we're left basically with a bunch of unfulfilling content, in my opinion. You see, the stuff was interesting at first, but it was kind of lacking depth, I suppose. It really didn't make huge questions, you know? There's a lot of unknown stuff, but there's not things that are really pulling us into, like, grasping us with, like, wow, energy, you know? The trailer left so many fans worried about the graphics, and maybe the style of open world gameplay 343 has taken, that one of a basic kind of Far Cry, maybe uninspired, or rather unrevolutionary take on open world Halo. So these things have all left us kind of concerned. But the question needs to be answered here. Do we even have a content drought right now? Yes and no. Thankfully, Halo MCC on PC has been the saving grace, introducing new armor to Halo, weapon skins, occasionally a new port to Halo game and so on. And that at its core is Halo content and what people are craving, and has kind of distracted us from Halo Infinite for a bit. But soon, and I mean very soon, this will come to an end. Almost all of Halo has made its port to PC now, and with all these new updates, I think they're going to slow down in quantity and quality, and eventually there won't be any new games to port or relaunch. Halo 4 is all that's left. And with Infinite, that's going to take center attention soon with all Halo fans, because that's the big thing we're all waiting for. And honestly, this game has already had a serious content drought for years, and this should change. Alright, so some of you guys are like, come on, Ron. We just know you want to milk Halo even more, like how you made a whole video on Chief's crotch vibrator that doesn't actually exist, or him being a prophet along with God. Why is Cortana naked? And then respond to her creator being a little bit salty on some private email. I've been here for a long time. I started covering Halo news in 2011, and this whole channel was founded on a flying squid I swore I saw in the trailer. And also how Chief's brain had barely any wrinkles, which, without going into detail with human biology and everything, would basically equate to his IQ being about 25 points. Ultimately, the challenge for me isn't finding out what to make, but rather what people are in the mood for, and what is just generally entertaining. And the bottom line is, you can't beat around the bush here, fans are always in the mood for Halo Infinite news, and so am I. It's easily the most interesting and intriguing stuff to get into, and certainly is the backbone of what builds the community. It's what garners interest in Halo actively. What is next in this big saga of Master Chief in the Halo universe, alright? And there's really not much to build off most of the time. I want to talk about what is good about a content drought, and then just completely tear into it, okay? Because I've been a content creator, like I said, for 9 years now. Making news on a new Halo game is usually pretty straightforward, alright? I cover the news, talk about my opinions on it, and so on. And at the end of the day, people are hyped, people are interested, this is good for me, this is good for the channel, and this is great for Halo and Microsoft and the community overall because it sustains interest. But more often than not, in fact, about 80% of my time on YouTube has not really been covering news, but rather focusing on theories. Sometimes, maybe some of y'all have said repetitive, and also lore. These two things are really fun to cover at times, and I'm convinced these things not only originated from me and others because they're interesting, but originally came or really sprouted from the fact that there was nothing else to talk about. This has caused people to look at the surface news, look deeper, and come up with some pretty wild theories. And people who come out and say that this is clickbait probably have some ground to stand on, because some of the theories that I've come up with, as well as others, maybe seem a little bit crazy and wild. But it's really coming from this place of just lack of content. But one benefit of a content drought is that it causes people like myself to go deep into lore to find the most interesting and intriguing things to discuss. But more than often, this is reserved for people that only have the time to do this very tedious and very, hard work of like digging into things, researching it, and being very invested already. And honestly, most of the time, this turns Halo YouTubers into just gaming YouTubers or float off to other games. In fact, there has been many Halo YouTubers over the years, without naming any names, that have just decided to stop following Halo and transcend, as I call it, because Halo has just such little content. And this is part of the reason why the community is constantly stuck at this low level where it's not really having much stuff to feed off and it can't get much bigger. How is any community in the gaming world supposed to sustain itself on a game that is barely ever discussed by the developers, rarely ever shown, and when it is shown, it's kind of mildly disappointing? And to add to this, there's not much of a backbone on YouTube's community, where there could be a lot of more YouTubers. And without that backbone on Halo's YouTube community, then 343's goal of building the Halo community bigger will suffer, and it'll just stay at this same level, which that's the first layer of the content drought problem. In a content drought, the best possible thing to happen is that the community has to constantly pick up the slack and lack of Halo content, and this often discourages creators from being involved in Halo. It can be done, and there's examples of it like with HaloFollower, but it's not easy to get into or be involved in for a long period of time. So much of the existing fan base and community keeps Halo alive itself, and I just don't understand why this hasn't changed in, about 10 years. What I find inconsistent about 343's marketing strategy, which is why I suspect there are content droughts, is that they're doing it the wrong way, is that they're aiming for the game, for Halo, to be a new player-friendly experience, but they don't do any of the groundwork to bring those new players in, such as consistent promotion of their game. People don't buy something on the first ad, they need to see it a few times. Halo needs to pop up everywhere for people to become eventually invested in it. There can't just be one trailer in the middle of a year after 5 years of the game being completely dark and then expect maximum sales. I don't think marketing works that way, or at least it's being utilized in probably one of the worst ways possible. I don't think that Halo is big enough anymore to be able to pull off a one-hit marketing strategy where they reveal everything in 2 months and expect maximum sales. They have disappointed Halo fans too many times to expect that much of hype just because the game has been in the dark. And honestly, up until like a month ago, 343 had planned to drop a massive amount of Halo content in the span of 3 or 4 months right before the game released, as their entire marketing window for the entire 5-year game, which makes honestly no sense to me, when there was literally years and years of time that they could have kept people involved in their hearts and minds, building tension, hype, and interest with new pictures, gameplay, snippets of information, or just even talking about the Slipspace engine. Obviously, this needs to change, and before you say, whoa dude, 343, they could not have marketed the game for years. If they did that, then they would have nothing exciting to show by E3 or whatever. Let me explain, alright? Even just once a month, if 343 was to consistently or will consistently show concept art or development on a technical level, or talked about literally anything involving Infinite to any degree, that would help feed the community to keep building interest and hype and just a fan base around the development of the game, much like how the Halo 5 sprint episodes did, or even had riddles or viral marketing games for us to solve or discover without someone at 343 saying, don't look into anything, it's actually not a riddle, but it actually is. I mean, that would be a massive improvement and help build interest not only with Halo fans, keeping interest sustained, but also just bringing in new people by seeing all the talk and content and just keeping that up on the top of the gaming community, alright? I'm worried that 343 is about to put us in the dark again, with months and months of no information about the game. Honestly, I think the game is going to release in 2021, and at this moment, I just kind of expect them to not release anything about the game at all until way later next year, like during midsummer, where they will kind of reboot the whole E3 thing, but it's going to look better because there was actual feedback about it now. And you could say that 343, yeah, they delayed the game because it's not sustainable for them to work at home, it's too stressful and whatever that they put in their letter, but the fact is that they revealed the game and told us that the game was going to release in holiday 2020. They put the release window, holiday 2020, in the premiere. 2 weeks later, after all the feedback, they announced the game was to be delayed. Irrefutably, basically the game was delayed because of their feedback. Why is the game being improved? It's because they shared content. It's because they lifted up the content embargo, or whatever you want to call it. There really is no reason why they have wasted years and years and will probably go on to waste another year with no marketing. It's just tons and tons of time that could have been used to build a massive following and consistent interest in making new customers buying products, investing in the series, feeling like they're a part of the tide into this next big chapter of Halo. And all this interest in MCC on PC is bringing in thousands of never-before Halo fans that are probably now invested in the game, and yet no waves to surf on. No content, but just a ripple of a big splash that happens randomly in the middle of the year. Hopefully at this point, y'all kind of see why I think a content drought, why on the surface is annoying, is actually much deeper than that, and it's kind of undermining the community, it's undermining the game, and probably only happening because they think it creates more hype to stay in the dark than it does to inform us a little bit at a time throughout the months to build up for a big splash that way. There are going to be content droughts eventually. Right after Halo 5, right after any Halo game drops, I expect a content drought, and all of you should as well. Content droughts are healthy to have. It creates a break of time. It gives the developers to catch up and be able to share something meaningful and substantial later on. At this late in the game, considering it's been 5 years going on to 6, at this point, 343 needs to start revealing stuff, even if the game is going to be delayed another full year. Leaving a game in the dark for this long has only one big possible benefit, and that is by building up so much angst and anxiety and hype around its eventual release that people will just be so overwhelmed they will buy it before they see that the game has probably been ruined by the lack of feedback. And honestly, this strategy did not work out for Infinite in the first place at all. We already waited about 5 years, and then the big reveal came that we waited, the gameplay, the trailer, the story details, yada yada, and yet it came out so very mediocre. It came out as controversial, and even people that were defending the gameplay and the graphics were just saying that it was okay, that it wasn't terrible. That was the major defense for Infinite. But as I talked about in the beginning of this video, a content drought has the very likely possibility, especially in the case with 343, to completely ruin a game. And that might be a huge statement, but hear me out. There is almost no feedback, no communication between us, the masses, and 343 developing Halo until it's too late, until there isn't enough time to fix or change things. If there is something fundamentally wrong with the game for years and years, and then right before they drop the game, they're like, oh crap, millions of people don't like what they just saw, then what do? They either have to delay the game or just release it because they're over budget. And the fact is that 343 has time and time again been wrong about what people, the masses, wanted. They thought having an entire story about some guy following Chief would be more interesting than Chief's own adventure. They thought this cutscene would be cool, and they thought all the different abilities would enhance the gameplay, not de-evolve it. And just like with Halo Infinite recently, they thought this corner of the world was so impressive, fun, and good looking, and that the weapons that would be displayed here wouldn't come off as extremely mediocre and basically just clones of weapons we've seen a million times before, would be absolutely interesting for a 5-year-long wait to reveal the biggest Halo game ever to be made. They thought people would be blown away by it. But it's okay that 343 is wrong about these things. What's not okay is that at this point we all know it, and 343 still waits until the last minute to reveal things. Why though? Why? For all we know, they could be completely screwing the multiplayer in every feasible way. But we don't know because they won't tell us literally anything about it until probably what what was going to be months before release. And I bet that's still in the marketing agenda, which is a damn shame. I think we need to see a beta, even if it's broken and bad. We need to get in there so us, the masses, the people that are actually going to be buying this game, can give some feedback before it's too late, before we end up with another Halo 4 multiplayer. To end this video off, I like to have a portion that's a little bit more upbeat, positive, and directed at 343, and my advice about what they should do. I understand the story can't constantly be revealed. Like, they can't reveal what happens to Chief at the end, or, you know, things that happen in the story generally. That would ruin the game, it would be spoilers, yada yada. But there needs to be a flow of content and an understanding of what they're doing. For example, gameplay. If they showed that clip of gameplay a year ago, they would have a whole extra year to patch things, to work on them, and to fix them. Building hype and suspense over months and years, keeping people completely in the dark, relying on the community to be creative and to think of lore and to think of extra wild theories can have extreme benefits, but none are so good as the quality of the game, because at the end of the day, the one thing that can really fix gameplay, that can prevent as many issues or even a flop of the Halo game, is a beta, or trailers, or snippets of gameplay, and an active flow of information. And it certainly shouldn't be story details like spoilers and things like that, but another hunt the truth ordeal. Viral marketing about the game. Little riddles or clues that directly or indirectly tie in with the game, and most importantly, talk about the game. What struggles are there going on with Infinite at this time? What is going well? What is new with the slip space engine? How does the rain look on rocks? Show us pictures of that. What kind of biomes are there? Just recently, 343 revealed some concept art of Jaga, a new character, and maybe even too spoilery, but honestly, it doesn't even need to be that stuff. Multiplayer and just the campaign gameplay are things that they can show that can be improved. Making short updates and more personal the better, you know, like video updates, kind of like how Blizzard does for Overwatch, would be good enough. I think it would be great actually, and having updates like that once a week or once every 2 weeks would be great, kind of talking about just the engine, the technical side of things, and that could give us clues on how and what things might look like in the actual game. I think that would be a great start. Ultimately, I think a content drought does far more damage to the Halo community and the game in of itself than it does good. If you want to learn more about Halo lore, then be sure to snag yourself a free Halo audiobook, link down in the description with HaloFollower's Audible link. It's completely free and it's a quick sign up, and honestly, I recommend getting Halo Evolutions because it's an anthology of a bunch of really cool, unique stories in Halo lore. But guys, did you disagree with anything I said about the content drought, or agree? Why or why not? Let me know down in the comment section below. I want to hear your thoughts, and if you haven't already, be sure to join me on the Halo journey and subscribe to HaloFollower, hit that notification bell, and join 100,000 people who have signed up for instant Halo news. Guys, I will catch you in the next one soon. You take care, alright? Peace.